So this is a quick comparison between the two previous flagships from Olympus, the E-3 E-3 and E5, which I've just recently bought it used, and because you can't find it new anymore, obviously, or maybe you could find it in an OS unit, but those are quite rare, I imagine. But really, it's in great shape. Came with a vertical grip, which is also compatible with the E3, and I wanted to get it for some time. Yeah. And of course the E-M1X, which is the current flagship. So how do they compare in terms of size, in terms of the functionality and so forth? I don't want to do a deep dive into the specs. I just want to point out the things that are readily apparent to me. So, E3, 10 megapixels, live view, all of the features that you love on Olympus cameras, such as a small size, great body design that fits well in the hand, lots of buttons for everything. I love lots of buttons for everything. And image stabilization, all the good stuff. I mean, even then, with the E3, had USB video out from the display. It had DC 9 volts in, so you could charge the camera as you were doing bulb photography, and so the battery wouldn't run out. And it's got a studio remote connector here. And of course the battery bay and the memory card slots. This one records to compact flash cards and XD cards. And that's going to become important as we look at, oh, and of course built-in flash, which is also useful because Olympus has this ability to control other Olympus flashes in the studio via this flash. So you're not really using this flash to fill in, although you could. You're actually using it to control the other flashes and dictate what their intensity is, and dictate quite a few things that you can program wirelessly through the flash. Yeah, so it's really neat. So, then we get to this one. This one is the E5. This is 12.2 megapixels. Again, all of the functionality that you love on Olympus cameras, which is a great design, buttons, live view. For this one, the screen is bigger, and with the E3, you could do live view, and you can actually focus using the screen, but it just didn't work as well because on the modern cameras, you're used to pressing the shutter button halfway, and then on the screen, the image changes automatically, and it's focused, right? Not so in the older cameras. Remember, Olympus were the first to come out with live view. On this camera, what happens, you have to press the AL, AFL button separately to get it to focus on the subject, and then you press the shutter button, and then it takes the photo. So it's a little more work. Now with this one, the live view was in the next generation development, and so you can simply press the shutter button and it displays everything crisply and in focus on the live view. And of course it's got the magnification, it's got all those things that you love in Olympus cameras. And this one has even more connectors. This one has mic, HDMI, USB, AV out, and DC 9 volts in. Plus a remote. Oh, you could do infrared remote with this one, yeah. Now you may be wondering, what is a flagship DSLR from 2011 doing with a mic and HDMI inputs? And yes, this one records video. This one was the first flagship from Olympus to record video. It's 720p video, no autofocus, right? Just straight out 720p video. You could pre-focus it, or you could adjust the focus manually as you were recording, but that's what it does. And it records very nice audio through the built-in mic, and you can also hook the external mic up to it. Yeah, so it's quite nice. Very nice stuff. The video was an unexpected surprise for me. I had no idea that they introduced video on this. I hadn't looked at the specs. I just knew I wanted to get it if I ever found it at a good price. And yeah, the video was a very nice surprise. And also the much better working live view was also a nice surprise. Yeah, overall a really, really nice camera. I'm so glad that I got it. And yeah, and of course the E-M1X. The specs for this can be readily looked up online, but obviously 20 megapixels or 20.2 megapixels rather. It's got the high resolution mode that lets you take 50 megapixel images if you handhold the camera. It just takes a really fast succession of images while moving the sensor slightly. Adjust for the handshake, which is the amazing part. Obviously, as you take that rapid succession of images, you can't hold it steady because you're hand holding it, but it still does it, still stitches them all together, comes out with a 50 megapixel image. And if you put it on a tripod and put it in high resolution mode, it gets you an 80 megapixel image. So this thing is a beast. It's so fast. The autofocus has got this amazing AI built into it to recognize certain shapes and focus on them right away, like the cowl of a plane, or the handlebars and the helmet of a motorcyclist, or the front end of the cars if you're shooting races and that sort of stuff. Very good stuff. And of course it records 4K video, like the E-M1X that I'm using right now to record this with. And it's got this amazingly grippy body that I just love. I mean, you get this endless grip when you use it. You get the space to spread out your fat fingers if you've got fat fingers, and you know, you get nicely spaced out buttons and buttons for everything you could want, which is what I love. I love buttons. I don't like cameras with touchscreens. I think using just the touchscreen to control all of the camera functions is stupid. If I want to do that, I'll just get a smartphone and do that. When I'm using a camera, I want buttons, and I want a shutter that I can hear. I can hear that shutter slap going. I want to feel it. You know, that's the beauty of using a camera. That's a therapy that I get when I press the shutter button, because I do love pressing the shutter button. You know, I want to hear it going, taking the photos. I want to hear the shutter slap and feel it in the camera body, feel that little shake from the shutter. That's what using a camera is all about. I think e-shutters are nice, right? The very silent shutters. It's a nice thing. You do need it sometimes, but most of the time you just want to hear the shutter button. And no, you don't want to hear a reproduction like on a camera, on a smartphone, like on this iPhone that I'm using to record the audio right now. That stupid camera click. I know it's fake and it pisses me off. I want to hear a real shutter button. You know, it's such good therapy for me. So yeah. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to set up the camera differently so I can film each camera in detail and show them to you also side by side, and also in detail, and maybe talk through some of the buttons if I need to, but I just want to show them to you close up. I've arranged them in chronological order. So we have the E-3 on the left, E-5 in the middle, and the E-M1X on the right. There we go. Now, it's important to point out that, at least to my knowledge, Olympus didn't launch a flagship camera from the E-5, which was launched in 2011, perhaps announced in 2010. But from 2010, 2011 to 2019, which is when the E-M1X was launched, Olympus did not launch a flagship. Sure, they had all the other MFT cameras, but no flagship. So that indicates, or that should indicate to you, that they put quite a lot of thought into the E-M1X. It wasn't a flagship that they just off the cuff flagship, you know, just put together hastily. They took their time with this, so it's important to know that and to appreciate that. Because I do think Olympus cameras are underappreciated, and I'm not sure why that is. Perhaps people look at the sensor size and they go, "Oh, it's a tiny sensor, it must not take great photos." I'm not sure why that is. Perhaps that's the reason, but Olympus cameras offer great value, great image quality. Their lenses are really good. They have great performance in low light, especially with the image stabilization, which allows you to use lower shutter speeds and capture more light. They're amazing little cameras. They're great value compared to other camera brands. Yeah. So that's the cameras from the front. Now let's look at them from the back. So I'm gonna move this back to get the E3 in view. And why don't we have a look at the side as well? That's the side of it. That's the left side with all the connectors. E3, E5, and E-M1X. Let's have a look at the backs. So, E-M1X, E5, and E3. It's important to remember the E5 has the vertical grip on it, and perhaps I should take it off. Here, let me take it off just so you can see this, because it's worth remembering Olympus made the grips optional on these cameras. Again, I believe, in my opinion, it was to emphasize their portability, or the portability of the 4/3 system that they had at the time. So that's right there, that's the E3, E5. And the E-M1X, of course, has a built-in vertical grip, so you cannot take it off. Right, let's have a look at this side as well. Now I'm going to actually open the memory card slots because I want you to have a look at that. So Olympus E-M1X, it has 2 SD card slots. You have the E5 that has a CF card slot and an SD card slot. So in my opinion, the best combination for backwards compatibility and forwards compatibility. And the E3 has a CF card slot and an XD card slot. XD cards are slow. I wouldn't recommend them, and of course they're not being used anymore, so yeah, the world agreed with that assessment of the XD cards, but that's what was available at the time, and so they included both slots in there just so you could you know, use the cards that were available and be able to take as many photos as possible with the camera. This is what they look like from the side. The E3 and the E5 are virtually identical in terms of camera body, but they do have some changes in the button layout, and of course the screen size is bigger, and so on. And the E-M1X is completely different. I mean, it came out, what is it, 7, 8, 9 years later, so it's a completely different design. why don't I put the vertical grip on the E3? Just so you can see. Oh, I was about to mess up the little door. See, the door can come off the hinge using that little thingamajig there. It actually fits right into, which is a lovely design, fits right into the arm of the vertical grip. Yeah, now sadly my E3 has a crack in the plastic cover for the display. Not the actual display, just the plastic that comes on top of it. That's how I bought it. And the E3 isn't being serviced anymore, so I can't fix that. It is what it is. But that's what it looks like with the grip on. So I'm going to take the E5 a bit away and just kind of set it up like this. There, I want you to see what it looks like side by side with the E-M1X. It's the same deal with the E5. It's going to look the same from the front. But as you can see, it's a bit taller, it's a bit chunkier. And you can see the grips here on the E-M1X are a bit thinner, but actually it works a little better. These are a little thicker, and so it feels at times like you're gripping something a little too thick for the hand, perhaps for my hand. So I like the design of the E-M1X a lot better when it comes to the grips. Yeah, just a somewhat different design DNA, although you can see similarities here. You can see the top ridge that goes across. You can see how it's the same family design, right? You can see this one right here, the shutter button placement, and this indentation here has been carried over. I mean, the front wheel is the same. The placement of the studio flash connector is the same. And then, of course, this one has 4 buttons, but really just 2 that do the same function. The depth of field preview and the one-touch white balance, and this one just has the depth of field preview. Yeah, and this one has a built-in flash. Of course, the E-M1X does not, so you have to use an external flash for it. And from the back, you can see that the top LCD is gone on the E-M1X, and I can't say that I miss it. I mean, some people I know that complain about, oh, it doesn't have a top LCD, it also doesn't have a display here. Remember how some flagships have a secondary display here? And honestly, I don't see the point. You got the viewfinder where it displays everything that you need. You've got the big display here. Why would you need additional displays? So it's one of those things where if you gotta have it, then you gotta have it, and you'll choose something else, and that's that. Yeah, the placement of the rear wheel, control wheel is different. The E-M1X is there. This one is here. I have to say I kind of like it better here than here. Here I have to extend my thumb as I'm holding the camera and sort of hunt for it every time, but it's okay. It's fine. The E-M1X has a lot more buttons, obviously. Yeah. But the thing that's remarkable about these cameras, and about the E5 too, let's bring that into the fold here. There's the E5. Is that, 13 years after it was made, what is it, 9 years after it was made, the E5, these cameras still work perfectly. and it's amazing to me. Nothing's broken on them. They work just as they worked in day one. So that speaks volumes about the quality of Olympus manufacturing, and the fact that you can probably expect the E-M1X to work for 10, 15, 20 years, who knows? Yeah. The thing that might go, as it does go on some cameras, is some of the rubber might need to be serviced. The thing that typically goes on cameras is this, the cover for the connectors. So this might end up at some point, you needed to service it. Perhaps the little tab that holds that in place and that holds this in place might break, and then you would need to get a replacement tab or something. But other than that, yeah, it's beautiful. It really depends on how much you use them. Like, for example, on my E3, it's no problem. These work just as they did when they were new. They haven't broken off. The rubber doesn't show signs of cracking or stress wear on it. So obviously these connectors weren't used very much on this camera. Now, not the same story on the E5, where, yeah, this was the only thing that the person who sold it to me apologized for, and they were completely upright and honest about it, so that's right up front, so I like that very much. They told me that the connector here, oh, come on, focus, 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 there we go. The connector here, yeah, the little tab that holds it in place broke off. That's it, yeah. And the connector itself, you can see that it's got a little tear in it here, you see? But given that I don't really plan on using this much, and I can possibly replace it with something third party, I'm not sure, I'll have to look at some point in the future if I want to replace it. I'm not really worried that much about it. So that's the only thing that went on this camera, and that's probably because he got some heavy use in the studio. You can see that also the studio flash cover is gone, which again is no big deal. He was upfront about that too, so not an issue. But this one got heavy studio use, and so the things they use in the studio got more wear, and consequently it shows that wear and tear. But other than that, it's a beautiful camera. A very capable camera. I was actually surprised by how capable it still is. And I plan to use it for years to come. So yeah, I want to thank you for watching this video. I will leave you with footage of the 3 cameras, and till next time.